Welcome, fellow seekers of joy, to a journey that will fundamentally change how you think about happiness. I'm your host, Joss Blake, and this is yet another exciting episode with the Empowerment Hour. Today, we're diving deep into one of humanity's oldest questions. What actually makes us happy? Picture this for a moment. You wake up tomorrow morning and someone asks you, on a scale of 1 to 10, how happy are you? What would you say? More importantly, what would that number even mean? Today, we're going to unpack the science, philosophy, and surprising truths about joy that researchers have discovered. We'll explore why our modern pursuit of pleasure might actually be making us miserable, how washing dishes can become a source of profound satisfaction, and why dancing with strangers might be one of the most powerful experiences you can have. But let's start with a warning. Everything you think you know about happiness is probably wrong. Let's travel back to the late 18th century and meet a man who thought he had cracked the code of human happiness. Jeremy Bentham, a brilliant English philosopher, had a radical idea. He believed happiness could be reduced to a simple equation: pleasure minus pain equals happiness. Bentham's logic was beautifully straightforward. According to him, every human action boils down to seeking pleasure and avoiding pain. That craving for ice cream? It's not about the ice cream itself. It's about the pleasure you get from eating it. Why do you avoid touching a hot stove? Simple. You're avoiding pain. But here's where Bentham got really interesting. He believed you could actually measure and calculate happiness. He developed something called the philosophic calculus, essentially a happiness equation. To use it, you'd consider how much pleasure an action would give you, factor in its intensity and duration, subtract any associated pain, and voila. You'd know whether that action would increase your overall happiness. Bentham even had specific memories he could rate. He recalled a water taxi ride in Venice that he scored as a 9.5 or even 10 out of 10 on his personal happiness scale. If you could rate that experience numerically, he argued, then you could compare and rank all your pleasures. What made Bentham truly revolutionary wasn't just his mathematical approach to happiness, it was his radical egalitarianism. In an era where aristocrats' happiness was valued above commoners, Bentham declared, "Everybody to count for one, nobody to count for more than one." Your happiness mattered just as much as a king's. He even extended this principle to animals. Bentham argued that the capacity for pleasure and pain, not the ability to reason or speak, is what makes a being worthy of moral consideration. This idea would later inspire modern animal welfare movements. But Bentham's formula had a controversial implication. The source of pleasure didn't matter. Whether you got your joy from reading poetry or playing a simple game called pushpin, if the pleasure was equal, the activities were equally valuable. This deeply unsettled intellectuals who believed some pleasures were inherently superior to others. Now here's where Bentham's beautiful theory starts to crumble. Philosopher Robert Nozick posed a devastating thought experiment that reveals the fatal flaw in pure pleasure-seeking. Imagine a machine that could give you any experience you wanted. You could feel like you're climbing Everest, falling in love, creating great art, or achieving any dream, all while experiencing pure, unending bliss. Once plugged in, you'd never know you were in a machine. You'd live in perfect pleasure with no pain, forever. According to Bentham's logic, everyone should want to plug into this machine and never come out. Maximum pleasure, zero pain. It's the utilitarian dream. But here's the thing. When Nozick proposed this thought experiment, most people recoiled. They didn't want the machine. They wanted something more than just pleasure. They wanted reality, authenticity, genuine accomplishment. They wanted to actually climb mountains, not just feel like they were climbing mountains. This reveals a profound truth that modern science has confirmed. Pursuing pleasure as your primary goal is not just ineffective, it can actually make you miserable. Research shows that people who devote their time and energy to superficial pleasures often end up more anxious, emotionally unstable, and prone to depression. Think about it. The drug addict pursuing the ultimate high often ends up destroying their life. The person cheating on their spouse for momentary pleasure frequently loses their family. The individual who indulges in excessive eating discovers that hedonistic behavior creates more problems than it solves. Pleasure, it turns out, is like worshiping a false god. It promises fulfillment, but delivers only temporary satisfaction, followed by emptiness. Pleasure represents the most superficial level of life satisfaction. It's both the easiest to obtain and the quickest to lose. Here's the crucial insight that changes everything. Pleasure isn't a cause of happiness, it's a result. When your underlying values and priorities are properly aligned, pleasure manifests naturally as a secondary outcome. Focus on the foundation, and pleasure will arise organically. So if chasing pleasure leads to misery, what actually creates happiness? The answer might surprise you. Problems. Yes, you heard that right. The secret to happiness isn't avoiding problems, it's solving them. Life is inevitably filled with problems. When you join a gym to tackle health issues, you create new challenges, waking up early, enduring sweaty workouts, managing time for showers so you don't smell at work. When you schedule weekly date nights to spend more time with your partner, you face fresh dilemmas, finding engaging activities you both enjoy, budgeting for expensive dinners, navigating the awkward logistics of romance. Problems don't disappear, they transform and evolve. And here's the key insight. Happiness emerges from the process of solving problems, not from reaching some mythical problem-free state. If you try to evade your problems or convince yourself you don't have any, you're setting yourself up for misery. Similarly, if you feel overwhelmed by seemingly impossible challenges, you'll experience distress. The sweet spot, the source of genuine contentment, lies in actively engaging with solvable problems. Happiness is an active process, not a passive state. It's not hidden in a top 10 list on some website, nor is it a secret held by any guru. It won't magically appear when you finally afford that extra room or land that dream job. Happiness is a continuous project because problem solving never ends. Today's solutions often create tomorrow's challenges, establishing an endless cycle of problems and solutions. But here's where it gets beautiful. Genuine happiness emerges when you find problems that you genuinely enjoy facing and resolving. These problems can range from delightfully simple to wonderfully complex. Simple issues might include savoring delicious food, exploring new travel destinations, or mastering a new video game. More abstract challenges could involve repairing a strained relationship, identifying a fulfilling career, or nurturing healthier friendships. The underlying principle remains constant: solve problems to attain happiness. The magic isn't in the absence of challenges, it's in the engagement with them. But what about those boring, repetitive tasks that fill our days? Surely there's no joy to be found in doing laundry, mowing lawns, or filling out paperwork. Well, let me tell you about an extraordinary woman near Tokyo's Shinjuku subway station. In a busy supermarket there, they still employ elevator operators, even though customers could easily use the elevators independently. One particular operator has been doing this job since 2004, and she's always cheerful and enthusiastic. How does she avoid boredom with such repetitive work? The secret lies in what she's actually doing. This isn't just button pushing, it's performance art. She greets customers with a melodic salutation, follows with a graceful bow and hospitable wave, then presses the elevator button with the elegance of a geisha presenting tea. She's transformed a mundane task into something beautiful. Psychologist Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi calls this microflow, those moments when we add layers of complexity to routine tasks to entertain ourselves. We naturally seek these moments, doodling during boring classes, whistling while painting walls, creating little games and rituals to make ordinary tasks more engaging. This ability to find pleasure in mundane activities is crucial for happiness, since such tasks are unavoidable in life. And it's not just elevator operators who've mastered this art. Bill Gates, despite his enormous responsibilities, washes dishes every night. He finds the activity relaxing and mind-clearing, and he's even developed personal rules: plates first, then forks, following a structured sequence. This routine becomes a daily moment of microflow for him. The renowned physicist Richard Feynman provides another beautiful example. When he worked at Thinking Machines, a supercomputer company, He was initially given trivial mathematical problems to keep him occupied. Recognizing their irrelevance, he asked for something meaningful, so they sent him to buy office supplies, a task he completed joyfully. When Feynman didn't have important scientific work, he'd engage in microflow activities like painting office walls and soldering circuits. Investors visiting the company were amazed to see a Nobel laureate contentedly performing simple manual tasks. The lesson here is profound. You can transform any routine activity into a source of satisfaction by approaching it with creativity, attention, and personal ritual. The joy isn't in the task itself, it's in how you choose to engage with it. This brings us to something humans have understood for millennia but modern culture often forgets: the power of rituals. Historically, humans have always been creatures of ritual. We spent our days hunting, cooking, farming, exploring, and raising families. And these activities were performed as rituals, ensuring our time was filled and structured. Rituals weren't just what we did, they were how we made sense of our existence. In many contemporary societies, however, we've abandoned this ritualistic way of living in favor of relentless goal pursuit. We're constantly chasing the next achievement, the next milestone, the next success marker. But this shift has come at a cost. Look at modern Japan, where rituals continue to play a significant role in both daily life and business practices. The predominant religions, Confucianism, Buddhism, and Shintoism, emphasize rituals over strict dogmas. In Japanese business culture, focus is placed on process, manners, and methods rather than solely on end results. While economists debate whether this approach helps or hurts the economy, one thing is undeniable. Finding flow in a ritualistic workplace is much easier than in environments where employees are perpetually stressed by ambiguous goals set by superiors. Rituals provide clear guidelines and objectives, making it easier to enter flow states. When faced with large goals, the absence of structure can leave us feeling disoriented and overwhelmed. Rituals break down these pressures by offering step-by-step processes and smaller tasks that pave the way toward ultimate objectives. Here's a guiding principle that can transform your life: rituals over goals. When confronted with significant objectives, break them down into manageable ritualistic components. Address each element systematically. Focus on the process rather than being consumed by outcomes, which will follow naturally. The essence of happiness lies in the act of doing, not merely in achievement. Observations consistently show that the happiest individuals aren't necessarily those who accomplish the most. Instead, they're people who spend substantial portions of their time in flow states, enjoying their rituals and the structure these bring to their lives. This insight connects beautifully with something the philosopher John Stuart Mill discovered about happiness. Mill proposed that happiness isn't something we can pursue directly. Rather, it manifests as a byproduct of engaging in other, meaningful activities. Mill captured this with a wonderful metaphor. Happiness approaches us sideways, much like a crab. This insight was revolutionary and prefigures modern psychology by more than a century. Mill's observation aligns perfectly with what psychologist Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi later formalized as flow. That magical state where people become so absorbed in an activity that they lose all sense of self-awareness and time. Whether someone is playing guitar, rock climbing, or delving into molecular genetics, when they achieve flow, happiness emerges as a natural consequence. People who have a knack for becoming deeply interested in various pursuits consistently report higher levels of happiness. They're not chasing happiness directly. They're pursuing engagement, challenge, skill development, and meaning. Happiness sneaks up on them while they're focused on something else entirely. This principle extends beyond individual experience to relationships as well. Psychologist Arthur Aaron at Stony Brook University specializes in studying long-term romantic relationships, and his discoveries are fascinating. When Aaron entered this field, he noticed that existing research focused predominantly on relationship conflicts: why couples argue, negative emotions like jealousy and resentment, sources of anxiety and discord. But Aaron identified a critical gap. The problem of boredom in romantic relationships was largely ignored. To explore this overlooked issue, Aaron conducted a long-term study involving over 100 married couples from Michigan. These couples were interviewed annually with particular attention to three questions during their 7th and 16th years of marriage: how often they felt their marriage was in a rut, their overall satisfaction levels, and how close they felt to their partner. The findings were striking. Couples who reported feeling bored at the 7-year mark experienced significantly lower marital satisfaction 9 years later, even when conflict levels remained constant. These couples also reported feeling less close to their partners. Boredom, Aaron discovered, serves as a silent force that gently but effectively drives couples apart. In many ways, boredom is more insidious than open conflict, because at least arguing couples are still engaging with each other. Boredom creates emotional distance without the obvious drama that might motivate change. So what's the solution to relationship boredom? Aaron's research provides clear answers, and they're more specific than you might expect. The problem often stems from diminishing novelty. Initially, discovering each other's perspectives and quirks is thrilling. But once those discoveries are made and routines established, the sense of mutual growth and transformation fades. The key is actively infusing relationships with new and engaging experiences. But here's the crucial detail. Passive entertainment isn't enough. Ordering a new DVD box set won't cut it. Couples need to engage in activities that require them to learn or achieve something together. To prove this point, Aaron conducted a brilliant experiment with 28 couples from his university campus. These couples participated in activities designed to be either mundane or novel and stimulating. For the mundane task, one partner rolled a ball while the other watched, then retrieved it and repeated the process, clearly unstimulating. For the stimulating task, couples navigated an obstacle course while physically bound together with Velcro straps, requiring cooperation, communication, and shared problem-solving. The results were dramatic. Couples who engaged in novel, challenging activities reported significantly higher relationship satisfaction and increased romantic feelings toward each other immediately afterward. While such activities might also increase the likelihood of conflict, Aaron noted that this is far preferable to experiencing boredom. Importantly, Aaron doesn't advocate for constantly seeking entirely new experiences. You don't need to alternate between paragliding and learning Peruvian flute each year. Instead, he encourages gentle variations in routine activities. Aaron and his wife, both psychologists, enjoy hiking in Slovenia's mountains, but make it a point to choose different routes each time. They've found ways to bring novelty into familiar territory. Another researcher, James Graham from Western Washington University, discovered that happy couples excel at finding interest and satisfaction in mundane, everyday activities like cooking, childcare, and DIY projects. They've developed the ability to approach familiar tasks with fresh eyes and curiosity. This principle of finding interest in the familiar can transform the ordinary fabric of life into something enriching and fulfilling. As researcher Laura McInerney beautifully articulates, even if we live in seemingly boring places, we have a choice in how we interact with our surroundings. We can view things repetitively and unthinkingly, or we can choose curiosity and learning about how things came to be and how they might change. By choosing curiosity, we essentially choose a life free from boredom. Now let's explore one of the most powerful sources of human happiness: the experience of moving and celebrating together with others. When psychologist Bronwyn Tarr describes collective joy, she highlights an extraordinary phenomenon. The boundary of who you are dissolves. Similarly, rower Kimberly Sogg, speaking about the euphoria of rowing with her crew on the Ottawa River, said, "We have been in this rhythm where the boundaries between us as humans have dissolved." This isn't just poetic language. It describes an actual neurological phenomenon. During collective movement, your brain is somehow tricked into perceiving your body as merely one part of a larger whole that it senses completely. To understand how this works, Tarr often demonstrates the rubber hand illusion. Imagine sitting at a table with both arms resting on top. An experimenter hides your right arm and replaces it with a fake rubber arm. When you look down, you see your left arm and the rubber replacement. The experimenter then strokes the rubber arm with a paintbrush while simultaneously stroking your hidden real arm. Your brain receives two synchronized sensations: feeling the brush on your real arm and seeing it stroke the rubber arm. When these sensory inputs reach your brain's sensory cortex simultaneously, the synchrony creates the illusion that the rubber arm belongs to you. Despite intellectually knowing it's fake, you'll look at the rubber arm and think, that is part of me. The illusion is so powerful that if someone threatened the rubber arm with scissors, you'd instinctively recoil and scream. Moving in synchrony with others operates similarly to create feelings of group unity. As you move, your brain receives feedback from muscles, joints, and inner ear about what your body is doing. Simultaneously, you observe others making the same movements. When processed together, your brain merges these inputs into unified perception. The movements you see in others become linked to the movements you feel, and your brain interprets these other bodies as extensions of your own. The more your brain integrates these perceptual streams, the more connected you feel to those moving with you. Neuroscientist and dancer Asaf Bakrak calls this the kinesthetics of togetherness. This sensation can even extend to objects involved in the synchrony. Kayakers describe their boats as extra limbs, sailors develop deep attachments to their vessels. The perception of a collective self also changes your sense of personal space, that invisible bubble around you that feels like it belongs to you. When your sense of self extends to include a group, your personal space expands too. This broader understanding of space can translate into increased self-confidence and social ease. After dance parties or group exercise classes, people often walk away with an expanded sense of belonging and an embodied feeling that they have the right to occupy space in the world. I want to share a personal example that illustrates the transformative power of leading group movement. A group exercise instructor discovered this phenomenon firsthand when she began teaching at age 22. Teaching group exercise became the first environment where she felt genuinely at ease and accepted. Each day she was greeted by people genuinely happy to see her. Participants seemed to like her more than in any other social context she'd experienced. They smiled when encountering her around town, offered rides to the airport, helped with moves, shared life stories, and included her in celebrations. Leading group exercise gave her an extraordinary sense of belonging that permeated all aspects of her life, helping to undermine social anxiety and reduce her tendency to isolate when stressed. It took years to understand the neuroscience behind why students perceived her so positively. Leading people in movement fosters group-level trust, and as the instructor, she reaped constant benefits of synchrony-based bonding. Every person in the room experienced watching and synchronizing with her movements. Hours spent mirroring her movements built deep-rooted bodily trust in participants. This trust, though somewhat unearned, significantly impacted her development. Research shows that trust is self-fulfilling. People perceived as trustworthy tend to act more generously and dependably, confirming their trustworthiness and leading to even greater trust. At a critical life phase, she found herself caught in this upward spiral of social trust, primarily because she led groups moving in unison. When someone perceives you positively, you tend to meet those expectations as though granted permission to be your best self. Over years, she grew into the version of herself that students saw, someone who genuinely cares about others and community, contributing happily to collective good. These traits were inherently part of her, initially drawing her to group exercise. But would they have had the same room to flourish without that instructor role? Would she have become someone who consistently sees good in others without first benefiting from students' positive perceptions? Being on the receiving end of collective joy is an incredible privilege that transforms both individuals and communities. What's remarkable about joy is how universally we express it, regardless of culture or background. There seems to be a fundamental human grammar for happiness that transcends geographical and cultural boundaries. Songs that people describe as joyful typically share several characteristics. They're up-tempo, higher-pitched, relatively loud, played in major keys, and feature strong beats. Similarly, movements perceived as happy mirror these auditory qualities. Joyful actions tend to be rapid, expansive, and involve vertical motion. Happiness manifests through bouncing, leaping, and jumping, embodying upward and expansive energy. A joyful body naturally reaches out, gazes upward, and occupies more space. Researchers at Dartmouth College conducted a fascinating study using a computer program that generated both piano melodies and animations of bouncing balls with eyes. Participants created songs and animations to depict various emotions. When expressing joy, musical compositions and animated movements showed striking similarities. Joyful piano melodies featured regular, relatively fast beats. Correspondingly, joyful animated balls exhibited similar beats and upward-facing motion through higher pitches or upward gazes. Participants conveyed happiness through progressively larger melodic steps or visual heights, like children gleefully bouncing on trampolines or ravers, energetically jumping as electronic dance music builds to climactic peaks. These findings demonstrate how moving joyously can actually induce feelings of joy. Anthropologists worldwide have conducted experiments asking participants to perform specific physical actions and then report their emotions. Each distinct movement reliably evoked particular feelings, including anger, sadness, and happiness. One movement pattern stood out as exceptionally effective at invoking intense emotion, the quintessential expression of joy. This involves a full-body jump with arms extended overhead, chest open, and gaze lifted upward, mimicking the action of throwing confetti into the air. What's truly remarkable is the universality of these expressions. In the Dartmouth study, residents of an isolated Cambodian village generated happy songs and animations remarkably similar to those created by American students. This suggests universal understanding of how joy both sounds and moves. Traditional dances from cultures worldwide share these joyous qualities. Bhangra features energetic bouncing, clapping, and upward arm movements with bold jumps and kicks. Israeli folk dance accompanying Hava Nagila involves light leaps, extended arms, often performed in circles with clapping and singing. These vibrant traditions persist not only as cultural legacies, but as effective conduits for expressing joy. British anthropologist A. R. Radcliffe Brown captured this beautifully in 1922. The individual shouts and jumps for joy. The society turns the jump into a dance, the shout into a song. This universal language of joy becomes even more powerful when we understand how music and movement create lasting memories that can transport us across time and space. Music has a profound ability to connect us to different times and places through memory, often evoking vivid emotions with remarkable strength. One woman shared how she learned to ski at 16 while discovering the Beatles. She would ski downhill humming songs from Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band. To this day, those tracks instantly transport her back to joyful moments, mastering tight turns on slopes with feelings of accomplishment and happiness. Josh White, who performs as Elvis Presley at senior care facilities across the United States, witnesses remarkable instances where music brings almost miraculous responses from non-communicative or even comatose patients. According to White, these individuals often react to familiar songs. Their eyes light up, sometimes they start singing along. Even when the brain is severely impaired, people can still cling to memories associated with favorite music. When we allow music to move us, it creates neural pathways that can be retraced whenever that music is heard again, providing conduits for joy. This phenomenon of music building lasting memories is something many people cherish deeply. Bernie Salazar, a 39-year-old father from Chicago, shares this joy through dance parties with his daughter. Her favorite songs include Happy by Pharrell Williams and Shake It Off from the movie Sing. Bernie describes radiant, almost magical joy that envelops them during living room dance sessions, far surpassing any physical high he experienced from running marathons. His daughter, now at an age where she eagerly brings her toy phone requesting more music, has even asked him to dance in public places like Target. Bernie embraces these spontaneous moments, knowing such memories are precious and worth creating, even if it means dancing unabashedly in supermarkets. Another touching example involves grandparents who often sang Always to each other, a song they first danced to in 1946. Written by Irving Berlin in 1925 as a wedding gift to his wife, it encapsulates promises of eternal love. The grandparents continued this ritual throughout their lives, preserving their bond and memories through shared musical experience. Though their grandchild never witnessed their dance, listening to Frank Sinatra's recording of the song late at night provided deep emotional connection to their story. The lyrics resonated so strongly that it inspired creating new cherished memories while feeling intimate connection to the grandparents' past. These stories collectively highlight how music serves not only as a bridge to our past, but also lays foundations for future memories, forming integral parts of our emotional and psychological lives. As we reach the end of our journey through the science of joy, let's step back and see the beautiful architecture that emerges when we put all these pieces together. We began with Jeremy Bentham's mathematical approach to happiness and discovered its fundamental flaw, that pursuing pleasure directly often leads to emptiness and depression. We learned that happiness isn't found in the absence of problems, but in the active engagement with meaningful challenges. We explored how mundane tasks can be transformed into sources of joy through microflow and ritual, how happiness approaches us sideways when we're absorbed in activities we genuinely care about, and how boredom, not conflict, might be the greatest threat to our relationships. We discovered the neuroscience of collective joy, how moving together literally changes our brain's perception of self and others, creating bonds of trust and belonging that can transform our entire social experience. We saw how joy has a universal language that transcends culture, and how music and movement create neural pathways that can transport us across time and space. The science is clear. Joy isn't something that happens to you. It's something you create through how you choose to engage with problems, relationships, rituals, and the simple act of moving through the world with curiosity and connection. Happiness doesn't come from achieving some perfect state of permanent bliss. It comes from the ongoing dance of solving problems, creating flow, building connections, and choosing again and again to approach life with wonder rather than resignation. So tomorrow morning, when someone asks you how happy you are on a scale of 1 to 10, you'll know something profound. The question itself misses the point. Happiness isn't a number or a destination. It's a way of traveling through life. I'm your host, Joss Blake, and this has been The Empowerment Hour. Thank you so much for joining me, and don't forget to download Scoob, an AI-powered podcast studio that offers 1,000-plus podcasts on everything from science to spirituality, and the depths of true crime incidents to the mysteries around us. Feel free to check us out on Apple Podcasts and Spotify, and like and subscribe to our channels to never miss an episode. Thank you.